I'm Amanda Kraus. I know a bunch of you, which is really fun. And I am in week 5 at US Rowing and having a lot of fun. And definitely started off my first 2 weeks with doing a listening tour, one-on-ones with all the staff and the board members at US Rowing. So really trying to hear from everybody and not come in with what I think should happen, we should do or not do, but really just listen and ask questions and think. I'm treating myself to that for the first 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, I'm doing other things too. I'm not just sitting around thinking, but it's been incredibly helpful. And this is actually the first listening Zoom with this group. And the goal really is for me to not do the talking, but to do the listening and to ask questions and hear from you all. And this will not be your only opportunity to talk to me or give feedback. So I hope this is just the beginning of what should be an ongoing conversation. So if we could do a really quick, if people can enter into the chat, if they're comfortable, where you are rowing. Where do you row? I just like, it's good to know, you know, where people are dialing in from. Great, we've got Iowa. Got anyone else in the middle of the country? All right. Oh, good. DC and Texas, Atlanta, awesome. Always got Buffalo represented. That's great. And for people who don't know, before US Rowing, I worked with Matt Logue at Row New York, and we were a youth, we still are a youth serving organization that brings competitive rowing to young people from under-resourced communities in New York City. And we had a really, still do, wonderful adaptive rowing program there for New Yorkers. So any New Yorker with a disability, cognitive or physical, can row with us. And it was definitely one of my favorite parts about working at Row New York. So I know a little bit about the adaptive rowing world, certainly more than I know about the national team, but I'm learning quickly. But I'm excited to learn from you all. So I guess my first question, and you can either enter it in the chat, or, you know, I'd love to hear from people if you want to maybe you know, just unmute yourself and answer the question. Would be my first question is, you know, what are any of the unique challenges that you feel adaptive rowers, whether it's you or other people in the adaptive community, face in accessibility around rowing? And don't worry, I'm definitely going to get into what US Rowing can do to help this community and be a resource. But first, I'd love to just sort of get a sense from people doing the work or on the ground. Ooh, someone's typing really quickly. That's impressive. Is this a copy and paste? That was very impressive. Is there anyone who feels, and I think we can actually capture all of these, right, Brett? I think, or Jack, I think we're able to capture all of these chat notes. But, oh, great. Thanks, Elle. Anyone want to share sort of what are the unique challenges that I should make sure that I'm aware of and US Rowing is aware of that maybe we're not? Nothing? Ellen? Thanks, Ellen.
Sure. I'll just make one comment. I have no great insight there, except that what I feel we need to do in the US is not just let FISA dictate how and who we allow to participate in adaptive and para events. I'll say from experience, coaching deaf, hard of hearing athletes is way more difficult than coaching blind athletes, for example. However, we don't even have a category for that. So I'm a big fan. A lot of people have, you know, heard me talk about inclusion rowing, but however we do it, we need our tent domestically to be bigger than FISA so that we can actually draw out more participation from a lot of categories. and ultimately have a even more powerful Paralympic team, but we can't limit ourselves to that pathway. And that's a difficult one, but I just agree with that person saying, yeah, we need to figure that out, not only from a practical standpoint, how do we coach and what kind of technology is needed, but how can we justify that person potentially needing a distinct category for racing that would keep it fair. So I'll just throw my 2 cents in that we need to accommodate a much broader range of disability and impairments when we think about domestic adaptive rowing.
Not just leaning on FISA's categorizations.
Yeah.
That's
Ellen,
super helpful.
Ellen, it's Tim Giruso. I would just totally support everything she just said around having an inclusion approach, and having that guide us is really going to be pivotal. Trying to find people who fit into pigeonholes as anointed by others it's almost dysfunctional from the get-go, in my opinion. But great comments, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. I know Ellen also from community rowing. So, okay, super. What other challenges, either as a coach of adaptive rowing, as someone just in the community, or a rower yourself? Patrick?
Hi,
Patrick.
howdy. Yeah, just echoing what Ellen just said. I think for me, I would say the biggest challenge for the last 12 years has been an inconsistency in the messaging, and inconsistency in knowing the rules, who's doing what, who's in what position, and it's just kind of all over the place with US, and it causes a lot of frustration around the country when everybody doesn't know the same answer, everybody doesn't know the same leadership, everybody doesn't know the same direction, and regatta to regatta, as we've gotten bigger, with the different programs, going to a different regatta and it being left upon you as either a race, as a coach, or a race official, or a director, to make up the rules or to see them change even within one regatta between different clubs. It just makes it really hard, because I think from the program director standpoint, as well as from the athlete's standpoint, there's unnecessary angst between people, I want to say, having opinions as opposed to having regulation. And I think US Rowing really needs to get regulation written down, it be transparent, communication be out there. And because we, honestly, like I haven't known for the last 2 years who is the director of para, who is the head coach of para, who is what. And there's just a lot of interpretation of that around the country.
That is super helpful. I would not have known that was an issue, but it makes absolute sense that, yeah, if you show up at different races and there are different sets of rules or expectations, I imagine that would be extremely frustrating. The head of para rowing is right here on this Zoom, Ellen Minzner. And then adaptive running the running point for adaptive rowing from US Rowing is Deb Arenberg. And we're going to be putting as many more resources as we can into adaptive rowing as we move forward. That's definitely a priority. And that was a great recommendation. Thank you, Patrick. Sure. Anything else? What, Big B?
No, sorry, that's coming up with partially my email address. I'm Patty Michaud from
Hi,
Three
Patty.
Rivers Rowing.
Great. You work with Matt, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I founded the adaptive program in Three Rivers back in 1987, and I'm an adaptive rower myself. A couple of the things I know that we have some issues with occasionally, well, particularly training of volunteers and making sure that that's consistent. We used to have a training manual, but I think getting back to what Patrick said about having consistent rules, if we could work at the US Rowing level of getting out some kind of volunteer training level, because oftentimes we are staffed with volunteers and the training they get is really dependent upon the quality of the coach or whoever's running the program. And from a safety aspect and just an enjoyment of the sport, I think having some consistent training for volunteers who participate and help out with the program would be beneficial. One thing that a lot of our athletes struggle with is just getting down to the docks, the transportation.
To the boathouse or boathouse to dock?
No, our boathouse is fully accessible. We
Okay.
built it that way. But just getting to the location to row. I think that
Yeah.
if you're fortunately, we do have some resources in Pittsburgh for public transportation, but that isn't always.
Is that universal? Everyone I know in New York City, it's terrible. Access-a-Ride. Any other not thumbs? Is transportation a problem? Thumbs up. Okay. I mean, we should be saying thumbs down, but yeah. Okay. So that seems pretty universal. What other challenges that we might not be thinking about? Remit 419. Oh wait, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. Yeah, that's me. I just was doing a thumbs up on the transportation business.
Oh, great. Yeah.
I believe that's certainly a problem here. I suspect that's a universal problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Not unique to New York City. Any other challenges that Audrey? Where are you from, Audrey?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm Audrey Farnum. I am a blind rower from Oklahoma City. And a challenge that I have been encountering, especially during the virtual fall challenge, has been with website accessibility. So I use a screen reader to access the computer. And were many times when I was entering events where I just it couldn't be done without sighted help. And so I would like US Rowing to take a more active approach to making sure that entry forms for US Rowing events are accessible to everyone. And even like the virtual events, that was a big challenge for me. I had to get, I couldn't, the virtual apps for linking up ergs and stuff, I couldn't use any of that without sighted assistance. And I had to have sighted teammates caught for me instead of being able to use erg data, which I am used to. And the other thing, even something as simple, I had a question about rules, and I was on the US Rowing website today trying to find the official rules of racing, and it's an inaccessible PDF. So I had to download it and spend a great deal of time converting it with an OCR program. So it took me, the whole process, 20 to 30 minutes just so I could even get to where I could read the rules. So goodness. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I would like to see a fix.
Yeah. Sure. Well, thank you for joining us and for the feedback. And this makes me way too excited, more excited than I should be, but that says something about my life right now. I'm like, this is great to learn from you all, like what we can be doing, because it's certainly not something I would think of. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anything else that, yes, that is David.
So I also row adaptive with Three Rivers. I'm also actually in West Virginia University. I'm the faculty advisor for WV Men's Crew. One of the big issues that we have is trying to get the adaptive athletes to look at us compared to looking at hockey, at some of the other more popular or more publicized sports, such as basketball and hockey. So we need to get that word out there, in fact, that we are available. The other thing that's interesting about our adaptive nature is that many people join the adaptive rowing later in life. So they've had a stroke. And the programs really have a difficult time. I know Patrick and I have sort of chatted about this in the past. So these people come out of, they were living normal, healthy lives, and then suddenly they have a stroke, and now they're an adaptive athlete. And I think that we really do need to encourage them to participate, because we have seen so many handicapped individuals become alive again by being part of an adaptive team. And I think that that's just something we need to be continuously focusing on.
Follow up on that. Thank you for that. Is there anything you think that US Rowing, and I'm going to get more broadly to that, to what US Rowing can be doing, but is there anything specific you think US Rowing could be doing to support? I completely agree with what you're saying, but support that effort. I mean, maybe it's making promotional materials that clubs could use to promote the sport. I'm just thinking out loud here, but if anyone has specific ideas. Tim, did you have an idea?
Yeah, I have one, and it kind of goes to the comment. I'm sorry, I missed the gentleman's name, but when he talked about coming alive again, there's a book called The Blue Mind that talks about the healing power of being on, in, or near the water. And in the course of that book, they talk about all of these sports, adaptive type sports, et cetera, where people who've had strokes or have PTSD or some other challenge, might be MS or CP or whatever, the benefits of it. So from a educational and communication standpoint, pitching that higher level purpose of what rowing can bring to people across the board, not just the elite athletes or even the elite para athletes, but just the benefit of what US Rowing could speak into in terms of what it means to be out there, engaged on the water, in nature, dealing with elements, reconnecting and connecting with people in the community again, being alive, being active and engaged. I think that kind of messaging throughout the entire community of rowing would be beneficial to all of us, especially in the work we're doing.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I'm going to come back to this, but show of, and maybe people can put it in the chat or they can raise their hand. I'm just curious to hear if people are mostly working with athletes with physical disabilities or with cognitive disabilities or both. So if people want to enter it in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, physical disabilities, if you could raise your hand, people working with, okay. And then I have to scroll over, and then cognitive disabilities, and there'll be a choice for both. So cognitive, we have, looks like a smaller group with cognitive, and then both. Oh, a lot of both. Okay. Oh, that's great. Neat. Okay. Any other challenges people are feeling that you think I should know about or US Rowing should know about experiencing? Stephanie?
Can you hear me? Great.
Yes, thank you.
So one is just that, and I'm not sure US Rowing can fix it, but maybe there's a way, but we have a hard time getting competition. So we have one high school kid and she just graduated, so no one can help me now, but who wanted to race, and we'd go to races and US Rowing would have an entry, but she'd be the only one there. And the fall race is the same thing. It seems like there are athletes who do want to race, but we're not getting ourselves at the right races together. And like I had no way of finding out who in high school might also have a disability who wants to race. So just a way to connect.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I feel like there were things we showed up at where people would just race the course by themselves.
Right, exactly.
Right? Yeah. Okay. That's a good one. Well, maybe this is the beginning of something.
So Amanda, this is Tara.
Ellen. Oh, Tara.
Hey, how are y'all? Seas the Oar out in the Pac Northwest. So Stephanie, what we do at Seas the Oar is we race masters in the doubles category, and we use a stagger start. And we've had great success with this for the last 2 years. We race at anywhere from 4 to 5 sprint regattas a year. And we just work really closely with the organizing committee and the race umpires. And we have a set system of stagger start. So we can tell you details about how that works, because we have the same thing where we're just racing ourselves, and why are we going to spend the money to travel and go all the way up there just to race ourselves until there's more people to race against. So we've actually had great success with stagger start and been so welcomed, and the umpires have always been super helpful. Race organizers, they just say, sure. And at the beginning of a race, they just re-announce it at the start block. They say lane 4 will have a stagger start. So wait for your lanes to be called. And it's so easy. It's actually really easy. It's just through really clear communication with the LOCs and with the umpires as well. And then day of course, hi, FaceTime, like here we are, printing out information for them to have at the starting lines. It's worked great for us. And we have some barn burner races happening in the last 100, 150 meters. So we're talking about PR1 and PR2 athletes competing in doubles. We've also done it in singles. So I'd love to tell you more about it. We've done it for the last 2 years. So it's awesome.
I love that. I love that.
Amanda,
Ellen, thanks, Tara. Ellen?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question. I think it relates to 2 points. One is the idea of competition. 2, the idea of juniors. 3 points. The idea that we are competing for athletes. I think it's very true. It is true that some people find para rowing due to their disability later in life, if they come to their injury that causes them to be eligible for para rowing later, that's fine. But one of the challenges we have, not only that we don't have enough competition within US rowing, it's that youth are involved in multi-sport national championships that don't include rowing. So, we're trying to like work rowing in, I think of 2 organizations, and there may be more, Adaptive Sport USA, which I think now is part of Move United, and the Angel City Games. These are youth nationals or youth, high level competition, multi-sport. And so kids are getting drawn into the excitement of these multi-sport events and competing with their similar age peers. And so it is difficult at the college level, even if you have some athletes with disabilities on campus, they may have been exposed to tons of other sports at a younger age. So, one thought I would have just to help some of the collegiate programs develop Paralympic pathways, or even some of the clubs to create this, is that we there's too few to create our own national championship. But if we could help introduce rowing into some of these other multi-sport events where they're still part of a big opening games and all this like great stuff that is cool about youth sports and getting engaged, that they can shoot for, then it may not matter if we only have a few people racing one another. They're still part of something bigger and they get latched on, and other kids in that age group see that. So it's really challenging, because we not only, mentioned we compete for athletes, we're competing not just from not rowing to rowing, like we're competing from somebody switching after maybe doing 4 years of wheelchair track as a high school student. That's not easy, because there are a little bit more clearly defined pathways through. So we do need to create more racing opportunities. We do need to think about, I think specifically our youth, and then I do know at the other end of the spectrum, opportunities for masters, because there is a huge number of people participating in para and or adaptive rowing who also meet the masters age categories, and how and when is the best time for that. But my feeling is we need to start thinking about excitement for young athletes with disabilities to try rowing, and maybe latching on to some multi-sport events that could be near water or house rowing opportunities. I think would be a great solution.
I love that. Speaking of solutions, would this group have any interest in, I was just thinking, would it be helpful if US Rowing held a monthly or quarterly Zoom, and who knows, maybe one day we could be in person. That would be fun. For, I love that Tara had that suggestion, like to be thought partners, and we wouldn't show up with all the answers, but to be helpful to one another. I mean, if that's of interest, we're happy to set that up as an ongoing coming together. I don't know if people have a thumbs up or thumbs down, or like, I already do enough Zooms. Okay, Ellen, Patrick, okay. And you can also let us know in the chat. That's something we could do for sure.
Amanda, it's Tim, it's Tim Girusso again. I think there's power in doing exactly what you said around creating the opportunity for this group to come together and be supportive. Like I just asked Tara if she could document that set of practices briefly. That sounds awesome, and it's something that could be replicated. I'm sure. I know we could do it. I love the idea. And there's an element of broadening the, I'm going to say, the acceptance and inclusion of the work we're doing with the rest of the rowing community. So just as an example, I know when Deb Ehrenberg and the last conference was trying to be set up, inadvertently, it was set up so that the adaptive thing was going to happen on like the first day, and then the rest of the conference was going to happen after that. It wasn't really woven together. So yes, let's set up things like what you suggested. That's powerful. And there have to be other things around weaving the inclusiveness of what we're doing with what else is going on in rowing and vice versa. Yeah, so that there becomes more of a, as Ellen said, a big tent that people are included in. So I'll stop there.
Yes. Yes. No, yeah, you don't want to, right. There's power in having these and benefit, right, and having this group conversation, but also we want to make sure that we're woven into all of rowing. Patrick?
Yeah, just kind of backing up what Tim is saying. When we think about what we do with a master's, a high school, or a college team, there's a regatta schedule that's out way before that year. When all of us have done this, oh, wow, you guys are rowing there, you're rowing there. If there were a set, like these are the regattas where we are going to have, a real push and a real support from US Rowing to get athletes there, to provide be sure, I don't want to talk about rules the day of with that LOC. I want it to be clear, because that changes who you bring with their rowing. And a lot of the frustrations from my athletes are like, we show up and the category is different. And so I think having a set regatta schedule of these are US Rowing supported adaptive para and adaptive regattas, educating them even what that means, would be super helpful to go into the year and planning that. The other point of I love, Ellen mentioning the multi-sports. Well, Athletes Without Limits, we are the national governing body of athletes with intellectual impairment. We took 4 rowers to Australia this past summer, and there were 16 sports and athletes from all over the country, all over the world. There were 2,000 athletes there from all over the world, and US probably had one of the smallest contingencies. And one of the things we learned from that was that ability to draw from other sports, that awareness of those other sports, seeing what we do with rowing. And I just think it comes back to us having this resource that should be right there on the US Rowing website, where we go, you go there, here's where you're going to find out what are the rules for para, for a visually impaired rower. What are the rules for a veteran? It's very different for, classifications. What are the rules for IDD? Do we have consistent rules? Because Deb knows I've had way too many times in the last few years to have to argue with people about rules for IDD. And, US Rowing really needs to finish the work of putting that in writing and have it be consistent. And that way we can draw more folks out with the different classes and just have more awareness, and it be found right in US Rowing's website.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's a great suggestion. Jack Smith is on here capturing all of this in case you're worried I'm not writing it down. Right, Jack? He's on Facebook. He's writing it all down. Tied to that, in terms of sort of the big tent, which I love and I think is really important to think about, because I think for too long we've thought about rowing as like a very small slice of America. It's like tall white people who rowed at Princeton. No offense, Princeton, go Tigers. But I think one thing I'm really excited about in this role is for us to shift this vision, this very narrow vision of what a rower looks like in this country. So, call me out when not this month if you can help it. But moving forward, if we're not doing a good job of when we show rowers, really making sure that we're showing what all rowers look like, whether that's sighted rowers or not, people of color, Paralympians, adaptive rowers, middle schoolers, you name it. Like, let's really make sure we work together to change, what rowing looks like, and how that's represented by us, by US Rowing, when I say us. So one question I had was, would it be helpful, and I know I have to give credit where credit is due, Deb was talking about this, but getting a coaching certification set up for adaptive coaches. And do we also target people who aren't even thinking about becoming an adaptive or a para coach? And, is that a need? If we were to create that, would people take advantage of that? I mean, people like Matt who are running clubs, would you want to send people to that sort of training? Would any of you want to go? That's my question.
I'll jump in.
Ellen,
Absolutely.
Ellen, you want to go?
No,
Ellen, you don't need to go.
You go. I'm talking at the convention, so people can hear me there. So I'll let Matt, I think it was Matt that was trying to speak up.
Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, I was just like, as a club leader, absolutely. Having a coaching development program, and I know Tara's been working on something like that as well. But more we can have, like we're talking about interweaving and bringing people under one tent. I mean, maybe coaches don't intend to come into rowing to be a para coach, but they get introduced to it in the coaching education program, and it's just another tool and an opportunity resource value there. So I think it absolutely should be in every level of coaching development, because it is changing, it is evolving so quickly, and the more this sport grows, the more coaches we need. So the more we can do early, proactive we can be, the better.
And Amanda, I just wanted to make one follow-up. I'd be a champion of, like, even before we can, create full-on coach certification paths, I think it would be important to educate all coaches, because I think we're looking for more inclusive clubs, about their obligation for reasonable accommodation, and educating people. I still have people that in fairly recent times to say, you can't row here, you're blind. Okay, and depending on the circumstances, that club may or may not be there may actually be a reasonable accommodation. I don't want to make judgments, but there are still too many people that get turned away with a disability that could be reasonably accommodated in a youth program, in a master's program, and clubs need to recognize that there is an obligation under ADA. I don't know the exact rule. I'm not a lawyer, but I know the interpretation that you're kind of obligated to make a reasonable accommodation, as long as it's not going to run you into the ground financially. It's not going to endanger anyone, and it's not going to give an unfair advantage. So I think letting clubs know that we're looking to be more inclusive. We have an obligation to provide a reasonable accommodation when requested, like closed captioning for meetings or sign interpretation for meetings. These are things we should all be well versed in, and we really don't want any US rowing organization to turn someone away simply by disability. Now, it may very well be that the accommodation that is requested isn't reasonable on that, weekend volunteer driven place that has I don't really know, but I'm just saying, on a case-by-case basis, we are more obligated than I think we know to provide a reasonable accommodation, because I'm still hearing athletes being turned away for disabilities that I would consider fairly reasonable to fold into a traditional program, even though there were no adaptive specific program available to that person.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
Can I just add on to that I think one of the most important initiatives for us is educating people that are not in this community. Because I know, like, particularly with stuff going virtual, I've seen stuff where I had to reach out to someone and say, hey, would you consider adding some para or adaptive classifications so that we can, so these athletes can race, not in a, just an open category. And I think people are, particularly with virtual stuff where they don't actually really have to make many accommodations, people are receptive to that. And certainly, like in indoor racing, they're going to be reasonably accepting of that. In outdoor racing, they might just need help knowing, okay, what are the classifications and what are the accommodations that are needed.
Yeah, that's helpful feedback. Where are you from, Irene?
Washington, D.C. Minzner National Rehab.
Great. Oh, Dwight.
Yeah, I don't want to be an anti-education person. I'm totally over-schooled myself, and so I'm not against more training. But it all comes down to a demand side, right? If we don't have enough athletes, getting more education to coach, one is I guess effective, but if that person goes away, then you have training you're not using. So if it were training were a requirement, it would certainly be a dissuader for, I'd say our club. I've been involved with Adaptive for 4 years, and we have a fairly healthy contingent of relatively alternately abled people that row with us. But it's very weather dependent, and the pandemic certainly hasn't helped their access. But OJT is the best way for me to train my my volunteers, and I already have with the ability to get classifier training. I think I would point people right there right away. With Judy, just to have people who are interested to get further certification or endorsements on their coaches, level training, whatever we have, I think is an instant outlet. I learned a tremendous amount by going to the classifier training around this in terms of everything that's involved. So I really wouldn't know how it looked, right? There are some other trainings that are sports independent that I think that we certainly can find, but I don't know how much US rowing can really do to add on to that.
So you're saying don't make it, you're not opposed to it obviously, but don't make it mandatory so that it precludes non-trained coaches from coaching people.
Right. I mean, coaches don't run clubs. Clubs run them, club boards run that. And club boards will determine what level of coaching training is required for them to pay somebody, let's say, to be a coach. The only place that might be really relevant is how much US rowing has influence on collegiate rowing to push that to the collegiate channel. So I'll admit, through 4 years of being involved, I'm not really familiar with the para world in terms of bringing my young athlete up through the ranks into making him aware of his opportunities with rowing. And I was overjoyed to find out this year when it was canceled, unfortunately a month later, that Dad Vale includes a para classification in the collegiate rowing. So what we learned at Atlanta at the master's level, you show up with your adaptive rowers, whether they be para or veterans or whatever, and you get club points. Other clubs will respond. We almost took away.
Good motivator, right?
We almost took away the Southeast Championship from Nashville because of our 71 points that we gained from our adaptive program just by clobbering everybody. And the next year, Nashville coaches were calling me to find what they can do to get involved.
Yeah,
it's the old adage: what gets measured gets done.
Yeah. That's great. I kind of love that.
So if Dad Vale, leads the way with collegiate sports and clubs start getting points for their para rowers, let me tell you how quickly they'll step up. So
I love that.
Right. So I mean, we've got one promising athlete. Hopefully he maintains interest. I mean, he really loves baseball more than he loves rowing, but if he has no place to go when he gets to college, I don't know what to tell him, right? So if there's something that US Rowing could do to really push the Dad Vale example with club points being awarded at regattas, those people
that's a fun one. Ellen, we should talk about that.
Those
Debbie.
people,
I love that.
Those people are so motivated by
points, right? Trophies. Oh, that's fun. So, we don't have a ton of time. I would love to know from people, what can US Rowing do to be helpful to you as a rower, you as a club administrator, a coach, and in the adaptive world. So what can we do? Tara.
I would just say there's a lot of programs that are working really, really well in this country and globally. And I would say that the more alliance building that can happen with the clubs that actually are succeeding and have resources to share, rather than US Rowing being this separate body entity trying to figure it out for everyone else. At the ground level, we are succeeding. We are doing the work. We are developing the rowers. We are talking to each other. And I don't think that top-down kind of model really is relevant in this particular scenario, because we need to value everyone's contributions to date. We have all been working very hard for very many years with very limited resources. And that is an incredible body of knowledge. Those alliances, how can US Rowing support Athletes Without Limits? How can they partner? How can they tag each other? How can they co-produce an event? Or with Dwight's program, or, hey, we're gonna spotlight this program that's doing really well and show everyone through the models that already exist, rather than wasting time creating new things. Ask us what works. Ask us what's really great, and ask us, we don't need to be reinventing this stuff. It's frustrating to hear this question asked over and over and over and over again of what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Ask us. We're doing it.
Yeah, I'm asking,
doing it.
I guess I'm asking you, well, this is my first time asking you. I apologize if you've been asked it before.
Well, I don't mean you specifically, Amanda.
Yeah, but US Rowing.
This is how it's presented, a lot of the levels of conversation, a lot of places.
Yeah.
We're starting from ground zero.
Right.
Ask us. That's why
don't recreate the wheel. No, I have no interest in recreating the wheel. And if there are, I think that's why I'm asking. It does seem like there are some things we can do. Like Patrick brought up the really good example of it sounds like it needs to come from us. Like, what are the rules of rowing when it comes to adaptive rowing? There are things we can do in terms of making our website accessible. I'm not saying, what can we do in terms of creating our own adaptive? You're all already doing that and doing that really well. But what can we do to support you in that? Patrick, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just think, just wrapping up, it comes back to me the same thing that I think in any organization or any group is SOP, standard operating procedure, document everything that we're saying in here. And I understand Tara's frustration, because when you're a leader and you've been to tons of meetings and tons of, what can we do? It gets frustrating and old to keep repeating the same thing. And for me, you guys know I'm very blunt. I'm going to say exactly what I feel. I'm not going to smile and go. When things are not documented, that have been asked for years and years and years, they should be on the website. We should all be able to go there and not asking this person or that person. This is the rules. There it is. It's in writing and it doesn't change. And so just having that website be a point where we can go and find all these answers. Have all these different voices found there, where you have a question about this, hey, I said this, so let's contact her because she's right there, and I just think cleaning up the information and putting it in one place where we can store all this great knowledge, people who are here
very doable,
are here because they care. So
and listen, I understand the frustration, and for what it's worth, I mean, most of you I'm just meeting and getting to know. There are lots of things I don't know, but what I can say is I do the things I say I'm going to do. So this is not falling on deaf ears where it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. Like, there are things we are going to be able to do. And if I say we're going to do them, we are going to do them. Ask Matt. So it's, I assure you, and I know you've heard this before, so, proof is in the pudding, but this is not going to just, again, go in one ear and out the other. So, and I will tell you the things we can't do, but the things that you're bringing up, Patrick, for example, are absolutely things we can do. Coastal rowing, I had a call with them last week. They said, we've been asking for 2 years to be on the website and be talked about. I'm like, okay, we will do that this week. Guess who's on the website now? It's not hard, and we need to do the things we say we're going to do. So Maddie, what can we do?
Hi, yeah, so I just kind of wanted to add a comment. I'm pretty young and new to the sport of para rowing. My first sport was sled hockey, which was mentioned by David earlier, just kind of that other sports, other adaptive sports are kind of more well known, two of them being sled hockey and basketball, wheelchair basketball. And one of the ways that I was kind of really introduced to that sport and the national program within sled hockey was through camps, with funded from USA Hockey and the national level. Those were actually held in Buffalo, where I live, which is kind of like a group of about 100 athletes that are selected, which I know for rowing, that's kind of a far reach, but it's draws in from a big pool of athletes, and you compete against people your age and like wider, ranging from like 13 to up into your 50s, which is pretty common in adaptive sports. So I think that one thing that could even be looked at, and I know the pandemic makes these things hard, but kind of looking into what that could be for para rowing, kind of a camp. I was introduced to para rowing kind of at a camp in CRI with Ellen actually, and that definitely helped me on my trajectory of para rowing. So I'd say that one of those avenues would be really helpful.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And I love how you say that rowers, you are young, that they could even row into their 50s.
I'm 61, Maddie.
Some of the, yeah, you're,
yeah. Maddie, I saw you row on some video. It was awesome. You did great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I meant the older terms in terms of sled hockey. I know that.
We know.
It's okay.
It's okay, Maddie. It's okay.
Age.
It's okay. Patrick's dying over there. Yes, it's time to stop soon. I love it. Thank you, Maddie. What else can we do?
I've got one suggestion, which is
Stephanie.
Just that idea that people got points at races for bringing people. I mean, we do need to give some incentives, and I'm not sure what they could be. But why I love getting athletes, I also sort of, in one sense, hate getting the athletes from the clubs nearby us, because why am I doing it? Why are they not doing it? So what is the incentive for clubs to start this? I mean, it certainly takes a lot of manpower. We do it for free, so it takes money. But but we need to be thinking about what do they get? It could be just what you mentioned, which is a profiling.
Uh-oh, Stephanie. I think we lost you. Can anyone else hear Stephanie? No, okay. Oh, a profile. I think maybe you're gonna say a profile piece somewhere. Okay, we'll come back to you. Anything else we can be doing? And again, this is not your only opportunity to tell me what you think we could be doing. This is just to get the ball rolling.
I think,
yeah, Elle. I don't know who that is. In the, oh wait, yeah, yes, you.
Can I just speak up? This is Lynn. I wanted to mention a little bit about hard of hearing. It's a little bit different from what everybody's been talking about. So I've been rowing for about 10 years. Most of the time I've been able to pass as, being hearing, frankly. The last couple of years it's down to the point where I can't. So like I said, I don't know where it fits, because physically I can compete like anybody else. But with rowing, it's absolutely critical that you hear the cogs, you hear the coach, you respond to those commands right away. So for me, I'm behind the stroke. I mean, visually, because I'm used to lip reading, I'm always watching people, but I'm always behind a stroke. So in terms of what can US rowing do? I think, Ellen talked about reasonable accommodation. Reasonable is a big important word, because if you don't know what the solution is, you have to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel, and it becomes to some extent unreasonable to say I have this problem or I have this ideal solution, but I don't know where to find it. So I think that there is a big opportunity for US rowing to sort of step in there and be that conduit to say, here's where some solutions are. So for hearing, I mean, like I said, we lip read. So when it comes to can't see the cocks, unless you're lucky enough to be in the stroke seat, you can't see the cocks. The coaches in the coach put, they're far away, you can't see the coach. So really it's issues with the speakers are in set spots in the boat. Depending on who I'm rowing with, I could turn them up to maximum and everybody's sort of going like this, cringing. So it's really, my ability to row has to do with who's willing to put up with that. Ideal solution, I had talked to a bunch of manufacturers of Cox boxes a couple of years ago, could not find anybody who had like a wireless give me speaker that I could just clip in front of me, take it with me no matter where I'm sitting. No one seemed to have that. Nobody seemed to really be interested in providing it. I'm just guessing size of market. I also talked to manufacturers with the wired Cox box, and it was very clear that if you add a speaker beyond what it's made, so an 8, they can only handle 2 speakers. A system made for 4 can only handle 1. If you add an extra speaker by design, the sound becomes loud. So I was hitting a dead end there. So I think USRowing can really step in. If, depending on your priorities, that is sort of the ability to add the weight to say there's a market for this, there's an interest in it. And also for very, very small clubs like mine, I mean, we have probably maybe a maximum of 30 active rowers. Reasonable accommodation is sort of also the financial aspect of, are we going to buy an entirely new speaker system, Cox box system, megaphone for the coach because one person, can't hear well. So there's also that aspect to it. But the last sort of thing is like racing. Right now, I tend to stall just because of that dynamic. I also enjoy so, but I really can't race, or I worry about my ability to race right now. I've raced in a crew, I've raced in a double, and in both situations, I know from experience, I cannot hear referee at the start.
That's an area.
Like I can't, like I need to be close enough to lip read. If I'm lucky, I might be able to hear that they're yelling at me, but I'm really watching like body language. So it's like, what can I do that I can actually race? In a single, because like I said, I don't fit into a para category in terms of racing because everything is normal.
That's an area where I would say maybe we could be helpful because we are large and the governing body is if we go to, for instance, Ellen and Debbie and I are talking to Toyota right now and their engineers want to help us with para rowing accommodations. So that's an example of, where resources could be put in to support athletes like yourself. So please keep those, keep it coming. Tell us the things. We might not be able to do it, but we can certainly ask. And if we're asking for a larger group on behalf of a larger group, that could be, that could be helpful.
Amanda?
Yes.
It's Tim Girusso. In Rochester at RIT, the Rochester Institute of Technology, they're affiliated with the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. We've actually started a conversation with the engineering school there, NTID resources, and some other folks from speed kayak racing around this very issue. So it might be another, in addition to like the Toyotas, there are research institutes like in RIT where they're always looking for these kinds of projects to address these issues. And they don't necessarily have to do it from a size of market thing. Grant monies can be targeted. It can be spec'd in such a way where it's not expected to be scaled up into the tens of thousands of something. It might be more built to order type of thing. So this is something that we'd be willing to help with in partnering with RIT if USRowing wants to help us do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. If there are any opportunities out there where you think, it would be helpful to have us involved, please, that's why we're here. So I know, we only have a couple minutes. Yeah, Tim.
I just want to say that this young lady would be a great candidate to bring her experiences to that kind of a project, because, myself, I could never articulate half of the things she just brought up.
Yeah.
So engaging those people who are the users of the technology, you know, would be a natural. So I'd be happy to work with that. If you and Deb or others want to reach out to us, we've started that conversation here.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Amanda, there's a large group of veteran and our military athletes, I know from my team, that wear hearing aids, that wear very expensive hearing aids, and they can't wear them when they race. They can't wear them when they practice. And it's a very, very common drawback for some people to be like,
yeah.
So I think more people would come out of the woodworks if we did say, hey,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I forgot Big B.
Patty.
Patty, sorry.
Sorry, yeah, Patty Michaud. Para rowing in the United States is relatively new. If you look at the scheme of how long US rowing's been there, and I just think that and this is an immediate thing to do, but perhaps some kind of forum where we can share the stories of our clubs, because some of the clubs are losing the original founders of para rowing in the US. You know, those people, I know here at Three Rivers, the gentleman that started our program for the visually impaired and blind passed away this year. And so just having, I've been working with Matt on a project where we're documenting the history of Three Rivers. And so just thinking of leaving something there for the history of adaptive rowing before we may lose some of the founding pioneers, if you will.
Yeah, I love that too. And I bet others would enjoy it. So while I do the thing I say I'm going to do, I also am very strict with time and don't want to take more time, but I want to make sure Brett and Ellen and Deb, am I missing anything key here to share with this group?
Well, I just really wanted to thank everybody because, you know, I'm new as the director of coach education, and how I view my role at US Rowing is finding the people to bring forth the education. So Tara, what you were speaking about in particular about, you know, how do we tap the people in our various communities? Because like, I can't be the everything to everybody and create the content for everyone. And we need to utilize the people in our community that are already the experts. So like, I'd love to talk to you and anyone else in this community about, you know, from a certification standpoint, or how can we expand on what we already have in our level 2 manual? How can we improve on that? And then also like Deb and I have talked about, you know, is there some kind of higher level certification that we can do, and whether that's partnering with what you're doing with Seize the Oar or whatnot, like, yeah, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's all help each other. And this isn't Netflix. I keep glancing at it. It's a 2.5-month-old baby. So
it's a baby.
My assistant.
Yes, and Brett, I'm sorry, I should have introduced you when I made sure that everyone knew who Ellen and Deb were. Brett is a key woman at US Rowing and is excellent at what she does, and is in doing all of this amazing work on coaching education. So a good person to know.
Yeah, COVID has pushed us into virtual, and it's been so great for level 2. We've gotten so many more people certified, and we want to expand on it. We want to go in every area that we possibly can to help people.
So Jack is our wonderful scribe, and I'm going to be coming back to you all with what we heard to make sure we captured it all. And like I said, you know, I thank you for your time and your feedback, and, you know, keep it coming. This should be an ongoing conversation. We will get some things right. We will get some things wrong. You can tell me about both, or neither, whatever you want. I'm always like feedback, and, you know, I really want to affect change. And I know, you know, this phone call was already, or Zoom was already extremely helpful. So what we'll do is we'll set something else up and do more, you know, we'll do a poll maybe of the group to see if we want to do a focused conversation about something. It seems like Tara, for example, has a lot a lot of wisdom to share. You know, maybe you would volunteer for a question and answer. You know, we just want to be a resource. And so keep coming at me and at us with your really excellent ideas. And you know where to find me. Actually, do you? It's amanda.kraus at usrowing.org. And don't hesitate to reach out. And thank you for sharing a part of your evening. Or not evening, if you're on the West Coast, your afternoon. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Thanks, Amanda, for
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Amanda. Take care.
Jack, I made you a co-host to see if that would give you access to the chat for notes purposes. I'm not sure. I could also copy paste it potentially. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
You may unmute, Jack.
I was going live with the chat with my notes, so I think I have everything covered.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it looks. I scrolled through it one more time, and I think I have everything covered. So
Okay, there was the big chunk from Elle on there. On she had 3. I think there were 3 things on there. One of them was communication. One of them was.
that was right. Okay, yeah, I was right at the beginning. Okay.
Yeah, there was one at the beginning, and then she redid it to me privately at the end, just to make sure we got it.
Okay, I have that copy and pasted into my notes now.
I just want to make sure before I guess
No,
I'll go turn the recording off. We don't need to be recording this conversation.
No,
No
thank
one
you.
needs to know about my Zoom ineptitude.
Yeah, I don't even know how to review